Good morning and welcome to Cloud Native University Day. My name is Cortney Nickerson. I'm very excited to be here with Kyle. We're going to be talking about the absolute beginner's guide to Cloud Native. But before we begin, it's just an absolute pleasure to be here with everyone. So thank you for joining us.
All right.
Before we dive in, let's talk a little bit about what we're going to be doing in today's session. Cloud Native can feel very overwhelming to people when they're first getting started, and that's what we're here to talk about, is learning and getting started in this space. There's so many tools, so many concepts to navigate and things that are going on. There are different ways of doing applications, of deploying them, of setting up your security, of observing what's going on, and it can be a little bit excessive. So today we're going to try to help with that by comparing getting started in Cloud Native with getting started in a brand new city.
All right, so here's what we're going to cover today. We're going to look at containers, which are the building blocks of our city. So we're going to introduce Kubernetes, and Kubernetes is our city planner. So it's going to make sure all of our containers are placed appropriately, our city makes sense. We're going to talk about service meshes, which are the roads and traffic control systems of our cloud-native city. Observability that helps us know everything that's happening in our city. And finally, security policies to make sure our city is safe and compliant. And we're not just going to talk about those concepts, we're going to show them in action with a few demos along the way. So let's get started. I can introduce myself first. I'm Kyle. I'm a solutions engineer at Dagger. We're not really going to get into that part of my life today. We're just going to talk about cloud native and how that all applies to everyone here. But yeah, my background is in release engineering, platform engineering, DevOps, all the things on like the engineering side, especially like infra, CI/CD, all those fun things.
And my name is Cortney Nickerson. I am head of community for Nirmata, the creators of Kyverno. My background is non-technical. I got into tech and kind of have done part of this journey in learning in the cloud native ecosystem, which is why I spend a lot of my time doing community events. I co-organize our cloud native meetup group in Bilbao in northern Spain with some friends. I also organize KCD events, a lot of other community organizing, and I'm a CNCF ambassador and CVO ambassador. So I spend a lot of time trying to help people like myself in the past get started in this space. It's wonderful to be here with Kyle, who is a fantastic teacher of these things.
We'll see.
So, welcome to our city. This is Cloud Native City. And I want you to imagine that you've just been voted in as new mayor of this city, and it's very small. There are some roads out there, but they're kind of scattered. There are some buildings, but none of them are really, have been organized or planned. But people are starting to move in very quickly. You're going to have more traffic. Businesses want to come in to provide services. And so you're going to need some urban planning. You need some reliable transportation. You definitely need security so that things don't get too chaotic. And you're going to have to be able to scale all of these things up and down depending on how many people are coming in to live in your city and how quickly they're going to show up.
That's right. So cloud native isn't just about using the cloud. It's about making sure that your software can scale, stay secure, and run efficiently, just like a modern city. So we're going to talk about our tour of our cloud-native city. We're going to show containers, Kubernetes, service meshes, observability, security policies.
Best practices.
Best practices.
And anything else that comes to mind.
That's right, to make sure that our city can thrive.
So every well-run city has some basic key principles that they follow. If you've ever been in a city that has terrible traffic or way too much contamination or terrible trash pickup, which actually I live in a place that had that for a long time, it is absolutely horrific and it's chaotic. Cities need to have 4 basic things. They need to be manageable and be able to scale efficiently, and that requires proper planning. They need to be resilient and recover from different failures and setbacks that might happen so that they don't have too big of an effect on the people who are living there. They need to be observable so that people do know what's going on and have some transparency about different things and be able to monitor the health of the people as well as the resources that are in the area. And they also need to be secure because obviously there's a lot of different people that need to have a security built around them and built into the different processes of what's going on, whether it's building a building up to code or taking care of people on the street.
Yeah, so cloud native applications need to be able to adapt, recover, and scale without you manually fixing things. So just like a smart city, cloud native tools let you see what's happening, enforce policies, keep everything running smoothly, no matter how big your system gets.
So let's talk about first the buildings of our city. And in Cloud Native City, these are called containers. Imagine that. In the past, a lot of cities were built with custom buildings. And when you look around London, especially when you go downtown, every building is different. It has its own characteristics. They're all very much unique building processes that we're going in. But as you move further out into the places that are newer in this city, you see that there's a lot more structure that's very much the same, more modular buildings going on. So before, just like software, there were a lot of apps that were custom built apps, but as things start to scale, that becomes very difficult to maintain, and so you start to have more modular, prefabricated applications.
Right, so containers are these lightweight, portable units that remove the old works on my machine problem. So that means no matter where you deploy them, they're gonna work the same way. So you take your application, and when it runs on your laptop, you know it's gonna run in Kubernetes, in your cloud. So when your city or your system gets really big, you don't just place the buildings manually. You don't just have all these people showing up with their building and putting it where they want and then having chaos in your city. You have a city planner that actually needs to think about all the new buildings or all these new containers coming in and how those all need to fit together across your city.
So let's talk about our city planner. That's where we actually need to begin. So as your city is growing, you're not going to manually place every building. You need a city planner who's going to decide where those buildings are going to go, how resources should be distributed to those buildings, how traffic is going to flow around those buildings, and that's literally what Kubernetes is going to do for you.
Right, so Kubernetes automatically schedules, and recovers applications across different environments. So make sure that no single area or server is overwhelmed and repairs things when they break. So I think we have our first little demo here. And hopefully it won't be too blurry. Sometimes it takes a second to get started. Okay, so we have Kubernetes. We have a few pods running it already, but we want to bring our new buildings to our city. So we have our deployment, and it's going to describe what our new building looks like. It has this amount of replicas. It needs these resources. It comes from this image and all the configurations for our new building, right? So we deploy that into our Kubernetes cluster, and the planner looks at this plan for our buildings, and it finds a place to put them. So we can see we just got 3 new pods, and those are our new buildings that we just rolled out to our city. Now we want to be able to let people get into our buildings, so we create a service that points at these buildings, our map of our city, right? And so we deploy that, and now we can see we've got a service that says, if you want to go to our new demo app, this is where the building is. And so we can actually do a quick little port forward and see our new little building running in our cluster. So we have our little guest book. This is like one of the Kubernetes quick starts that you can run yourself. And then now let's go back to our cluster and say, okay, we had 3 versions of our building, but actually we want 5 now. So we can say, scale that out to 5 replicas now. And then this is moving super fast, but the idea is we can see the city planner now give us 2 new buildings, so we've got 5 total. So now we've got our containers, our city planner, working together to scale out our buildings.
There we go. So now that we've got our containers up and running, no city has no organization around their traffic. Now, I've been to places that don't seem to have organized their traffic. My favorite one is when a stoplight around a roundabout is in red and everybody is thinking, well, this roundabout should be letting traffic go, but for some reason somebody put a stoplight there and traffic is totally stopped. That has actually been planned, however, for some reason. We might not know why. I never do, and I'm perplexed. But there has been somebody who has planned for that to happen, whether it's to let people cross the street or whether it's to slow traffic down because there's somewhere else that's going to have a bottleneck. So in our city, obviously, we need to have less chaos with our traffic. We have traffic lights to help do that and efficiently and securely allow people to move around. And that's what your service mesh is going to do. So we're going to take a look at Linkerd.
Awesome. So Linkerd is it's the highways and traffic control of our city. So it's going to make sure that between all of our buildings of our city, all the components of our city, we have this reliable communication between services, and our well-planned city is not going to, it is going to prevent traffic jams. So we've got another little video here of this happening in action. Awesome. So we've got a little app this time. It's a set of microservices. There's 4 different services. And we're going to run this little demo app so we can see it. It's the emoji vote demo app, which Linkerd shows as their quick start. So we can use it, and we're voting on our favorite emoji. We can see lots of votes happening here. But all those different microservices have to be communicating with each other to make this app actually work. And so that's happening behind the scenes without us even seeing, with Linkerd handling the traffic. So we can run this little check to make sure it's all working. But we can actually prove it by pulling up the dashboard and then seeing, okay, we've got, in Linkerd, it knows about all these things within our cluster, and we can see the little microservices and how they're connected, and we can actually see the traffic flowing between them. And so this is actually managing the communication between those parts of our application automatically, so we don't have to worry about building the roads between our buildings. This is going to manage all the traffic and prevent traffic jams.
So the next thing we need is some monitoring and prevention, some observability is what we're going to be talking about. A smart city doesn't just react to things when they go wrong. It's constantly monitoring itself to prevent disasters from happening. There's some sort of plan in case something goes wrong. So that's where observability comes in. We're going to be talking about Prometheus as well as Grafana.
Awesome. So Prometheus it's our network of sensors placed all over our city. So we're actually watching and measuring all of the things happening around our city. And it's going to be collecting the data in our city, things like traffic, pollution, energy usage. But in cloud native, this is like application health, latency, and failures. And then having that data is not enough, so we actually want to be able to collect that data and visualize it somehow, and even take action on it, right? So that's where Grafana comes in. And Grafana can collect all this data that's happening across our city and give us great dashboards and metrics and even alerting when things hit certain thresholds. So we got another video / live demo. So my invisible hands typing things on the terminal here. So we've got the same demo app. Okay, so we're voting on emojis, the super critical production infrastructure. We have our Linkerd managing the traffic, but we've also got Grafana. So in this case, we can see in Grafana the traffic happening in that Linkerd service. So you probably have collecting data from all different parts of your cluster, but including those parts of Kubernetes itself and the traffic systems, all these things, right? So in Grafana, we can see the traffic happening between our applications. We can see the success rate. We can correlate that across the specific times of events. So we can see, if we had a big dip in success rates and a big spike in request rates, maybe we can dig into logs and see what's causing these different things to happen. But the main thing is, as an SRE or someone worried about the live operations of your system, this is where you're basically living. But you also want alerting. So you don't want to sit here looking at your dashboard all day. You want it to actually send you some information when things meet certain thresholds. So that is our Grafana.
And while we didn't go deep dive into OpenTelemetry, which is something that you will hear a lot about this week, as a beginner, it's something that you should always keep in mind. OpenTelemetry isn't a Grafana. It's something that you integrate with things like Grafana so that you can continue to trace and track. That was very confusing for me when I first got started. I did not understand that concept. It's very beginner. A lot of you might already know that, but just to keep that in mind. There will be a lot of other talks that cover that later on. Next thing up is laws and enforcement. So any good city needs to have police chiefs. They need to have people who are making rules, laws, things that you're going to abide by, to be respectful of others, to be able to take care of other people, to be able to stay safe. And that's one of the things that we're going to be talking about here. Obviously, there's policy creation in a city. That's oftentimes your city council. In Cloud Native City, there's no code. It just simply means just simple YAML or your CEL rules for everyone to follow. We're also going to be talking about detecting and fixing violations in a city. It's also going to typically be your law enforcement. They see somebody doing something and they stop them from committing that violation. Well, we're going to show a little bit about policies and how that works in your actual Cloud Native setup. Detecting and fixing policy violations. So a city inspector, maybe as you're building your buildings in your city, is going to do some checks and fixes. So we're going to look at that, as well as a basic city administration. These are things that are just good, solid practices that we all need to be doing once we have everything set up to make sure that what's running in our clusters is safe.
That's right. So Kubernetes is the city's law enforcement and inspectors. So it's going to make sure that everything, all these new buildings that we're bringing into our city, all these different policies, all these different applications, everything that comes in, it needs to match a certain set of policies that we set out ahead of time, right? So we'll look at what that actually looks like, but the main thing is we want to make sure that our city is secure. So in our next demo here, we're going to look at the first law of Cloud Native City, which is that every new application needs to declare its team. So in this policy, we say every deployment has to have a label called team. And so first we'll try and create a deployment with that one. And so we create an Nginx deployment, and it says, okay, that's not allowed because you didn't say what team you're on. So let's try again, but this time we'll follow the rules. And we'll specify the team, and we'll say team is backend. And look at that, it was allowed this time. So we can look at the new pod running. So we saw that the new thing was allowed into our system. And now we'll wait for that policy report to get generated on our new pod so we can see exactly what was evaluated for that. So we know like exactly what checks happened on it, what was evaluated. Anyway, so here's our policy report. We see our Nginx deployment with one little pass on it. We can actually look at the details of this. So we can see for this deployment, it was our Nginx deployment. We can see what policies were evaluated. So in this case, our check team law that we looked at a minute ago passed. And we can see a little summary. It says that one of these policies passed. So now we've just basically added that policy enforcement to make sure that anything coming into our city meets this set of requirements. Uh-oh.
All right, so just to recap, we've got some best practices here to keep Cloud Native safe. Do you want to go through them, or do you want me to?
Yeah, let's go for it. All right, so Cloud Native isn't just about reacting to attacks, it's about preventing them. So you have things like RBAC, where actually we have role-based access controls of different resources within our city. We have vulnerability scanning of these new containers. We make sure that they're not using lead paint in the walls. We have encryption. We have real-time monitoring. So we create a city that's not just functional, but also safe and resilient, right?
So role-based access very much is going to be your city permits and licenses. Not everyone in your city should have access to absolutely everything going on. So your rollback, your RBAC is going to be a role-based access control. You're going to decide who has access to what. Some people might just be living in the city. They don't have access to anything. Other people are going to need to be administering different licenses or information for people, so they'll have access to that data. It's a very simple, straightforward thing, but it is necessary in order to keep your city and your Kubernetes and applications deployed in them safe as possible.
That's right. Then that vulnerability scanning. So those are those building inspections. So we can use tools like Trivy and Falco, lots of other ones out there, to make sure that all these buildings in our city pass our safety inspections, right? So like I said, you don't have lead paint on the walls. You don't have a bunch of mold in your house. You don't have a big security hole in this new container you're bringing into your city.
The next one is going to be encrypting your data. Encrypting your data is making sure that you keep your communications secure and safe. So think of your encryption like having a city security systems or a home security system that's going to keep your private conversations private. Keep them safe. Sensitive documents also are going to be safe so that they don't fall into the wrong hands. You're going to encrypt as many things as possible.
That's right. And then you want to monitor for threats in real time. So it's your city's emergency response. So you want to make sure that if there's fires, gas leaks, security breaches, then you can respond to that automatically without your whole city burning down, right? So Falco, it does the same. It alerts you immediately if something suspicious happens, and then you can react to it before it gets out of control. Okay, so we've talked about how the cloud native city works. But where does it actually exist in the world? Well, the answer is kind of everywhere, right? So if anyone here has ever been on Netflix, apparently 1 billion plus users, that auto scales depending on how many people are watching your videos, right? So you have that, all those tenets of cloud native happening in real time every time you load up a video. The same for like Google Docs. Every time you're creating this spreadsheet, the spreadsheet we're watching right now, there's stuff happening in a cloud somewhere that's making sure that we can actually watch this and that no one's hacking my browser and I'm not doing anything else to anyone else's docs. Spotify, you load up the latest Taylor Swift album at midnight, and 1 billion people go out and do that, and they can actually scale to meet that demand so that everyone can listen to their songs when they come out.
A Swiftie. I did not take you for a Swiftie, Kyle. This is a surprise. If this session has sparked any interest in you, you definitely should not stop here. There's a lot of different places that you can continue to learn how to build your city and add on to it. You're going to be able to learn more today as the day goes on. There's some fantastic learning talks this morning. But also, you should definitely keep up with what's going on with the Linux Foundation and the CNCF. There's so many free courses and certifications that you can do to get started in order to learn the basics, as well as much more advanced topics. So please check those out. Certifying yourself, make sure that everybody is following the best practices possible, and makes your career path much easier as you move forward, because we're all using the same language, terminology, and practices. You should also be doing some hand-on labs. There's so many out there. Pick and choose the ones that fit best for you and your learning style. But learning as you go and then sharing that in public is one of the most powerful things that you can do, not just for yourself, but for other people around you. And then finally, join community. Communities are so powerful, and they're amazing, amazing sources of information for people, as well as networking and support. A lot of times everybody is struggling with the same thing. We're all confused about different things, and finding other people who are going through the same learning processes, the same scaling issues, or the same misunderstandings is incredibly helpful along your way.
Yeah, that's right. And yeah, if you want to check out like any of the demos that you saw, those are all the quick starts for the respective projects. So you can get them up and running in like a minute or something. Super easy, so you can dig into all those projects. And then what else? You want to hear about Dagger? We have a booth at KubeCon. That's all I'll say about that.
Yes, Kyverno also will be open for community questions in the project pavilion, and Nirmata also has a booth, so please stop by, ask us any questions you have about those tools or about anything that you've heard today. We've got our QR code up there, so please feel free to review these slides and reach out at any point in time on social media. We'll be happy to answer your questions.
Thank you.